Well, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, and good night, and all of which apply to wherever you're watching. So, I want to thank you for stopping on by to another Wilhelm the Esoteric video. So, for today's video, we're going to talk about a subject matter that's quite deep and quite intense and comes from our childhood traumas and from a lot of the things we pick up along the way. I'm sure some of you watching have heard that our childhood is almost like a blueprint to who we're going to be when we become adults. Childhood is a really critical time for our life. It doesn't mean we can't change, but what we go through, what we lack, what we have too much of, what we focus on, what people have come into our lives, what situations have we been dealt? What things have we gone through? Have we been betrayed a lot? Have we had a lot of nurturing? Have we had a lot of love? Have we lacked a lot of love? This could be different for everybody, and for every era of our life, this can change. And sometimes a lot of us have to endure a lot of suffering and hardship. So for this video, we're going to talk about the Enneagram test. Now, the Enneagram is a tool that psychologists, therapists, and counselors of all sorts from around the world use. And it's based off of ancient principles and a collaboration of different schools of thought, of philosophy, and of mental health within the social sciences. Life is made up of different avenues, and these different avenues bring forth different insight that we can learn to adapt and to modify to fit our needs and necessities as a society as a whole, which is why I wanted to make this video, so we can see what our strengths, what our weaknesses are. Now, the Enneagram has 9 numbers, and out of these 9 numbers, each of these 9 numbers represents different sorts of cognitive skills, if you will, different sorts of strengths and weaknesses in areas of focus. And these areas are developed in different ways for different people throughout different parts of their life, especially when they're growing up. The parenting of the individual is critical and really conditions the individual on what to focus. And this is because of an overindulgence in certain things, perhaps a lack of certain things, and different means of the sort. This varies from individual to individual and is the uniqueness of each and every person. Out of these 9 numbers, we have a foundational number. And out of these 9 numbers comes a set of 3s, if you will. Out of these numbers, sometimes across or sometimes right below, our Enneagram number, when we're feeling stressed or when we're feeling happy or content, will go and become one of these other numbers that's across or perhaps right below it. So, this varies from person to person, and just because your Enneagram number goes from one number to the other doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. Sometimes we go to certain numbers when we're not feeling too good or when we're feeling great. Vice versa. We can take in negative connotation from either of the across numbers that we go to. Now we move on to the wing part of the Enneagram. As you see in the picture above, Enneagram numbers have their wings. For example, somebody who is a 1, an Enneagram 1 as we see here, might be an Enneagram 1 W2 or W9. What does that mean? That means that Enneagram 1 might be more towards the Enneagram 2, meaning that Enneagram 1 might be an Enneagram 1 in foundation, but at the same time it's going to have Enneagram 2 type of characteristics. Or the other way around, the Enneagram 1, if it has a strong wing for the 9, that Enneagram 1 is going to be very much like the Enneagram 9. So we need to be on the lookout for some of these characteristics. It's really helpful to get to know all of them. There's this book I really recommend called The Complete Enneagram, 27 Paths to Greater Self-Knowledge by Beatrice Chestnut, PhD. Anyway, this video is for everyone, regardless of whether you have ADHD or not. But for those of us with ADHD, these problems might be a lot more consistent. You might have to be on the lookout for these issues to come up more and more. And if you have an issue with rejection-sensitive dysphoria, it's the type of difficulty people with ADHD have, that they have difficulty with rejection. They have difficulty with feeling like they let somebody down, or like somebody let them down. And it feels really devastating. And sometimes they don't want to do an activity or see a person again for years, for days, for months, or sometimes even forever. It makes friendship really hard. So something to bear in mind. There should be a link above if you want to check out a video on RSD. And for those of you who want to find out, how do I work on rejection-sensitive dysphoria? I know what it is. I just don't know what to do when it comes up. How do I address it? Well, there's a link up above of a video I made addressing those issues. How to handle it when you're going through it, how to handle it after the fact, and how to prepare for the next time rejection-sensitive dysphoria hits. Should be a link above if you want to check that out. So I just want to reiterate with the fact that depending on your Enneagram number, some of these points might not relate to you, or they might relate to you a little bit, some more than others, and some perhaps not at all, and that's okay. That's because we're all completely different. If you enter this with an open mind and an open heart, I truly believe you can learn a lot of stuff and you can improve the quality of your life. And if you have a partner who you know is one of these Enneagram numbers, perhaps this can make a difference for them, and hopefully you can help them improve. I would urge you to please share this with somebody if you feel this content is of some help. It could really make a difference. Anyway, the point here is to bring help and to bring insight. I truly hope that this information brings you, a friend, a family member, or a loved one, some insight and some help. We just have to come into this with an open heart and with an open mind. Now for this video today, we're going to be going over the Enneagrams 8, 9, and 1. These are the guttural, the gut types. The types that have a, how would we call this? A body center. The gut of a body is where the Enneagram 8, 9, and 1 get their power from. The Enneagram 8 is a really strong challenger amongst the three. The Enneagram 9 is more of the helper of the three, but at the same time will stand up for itself very fiercely if the Enneagram 9 feels the need to. And then we also have the Enneagram 1. The Enneagram 1 is the one that really goes out of their way to make sure that the necessities and things required growing up were always done for mother, father, or whoever the caretaker was. At the same time, disregarding who they were. Because of that, there's a lot of anger and resentment underneath the actions and thoughts of the Enneagram 1. The Enneagram 8 will just tell you straight up that they're upset and they might get really intense. The Enneagram 9 depends on the subject matter, but it can get pretty brutal. Point being, the center of this is anger from the gut, a feeling of intensity. It doesn't have to be bad. These numbers are driven by an intensity, a need to correct and go against what they feel is wrong, and to sometimes, or a lot of the time, stand up for those they feel are worthy of being stood up for, whether that be family, friends, or colleagues, or individuals who are misrepresented or underrepresented in society. These three numbers are known to be helpers and protectors of those they feel and deem worthy. But at the same time comes a reluctance to look at the insecurity, the vulnerability, the weaknesses of the self, because the gut, the internal strength part sometimes doesn't let us reflect on that, because we sometimes have difficulty viewing ourselves as weak or as needing something or needing a lot of something. So it's okay. It's really strong. A lot of Enneagram 8s, 9s, and 1s have grown up in families where they really have had to bust their chops and really have had to sometimes, or a lot of the time, overwork themselves. And my hat goes off to each and every person watching who's an Enneagram 8, 9, or 1. After studying these Enneagram numbers and having many close family and friends and colleagues who are Enneagram 8s, 9s, and 1s, there's a lot of responsibility that comes with being these numbers. Sometimes nobody else is going to be there to help them out, and they have to take on the bull by the horns by themselves sometimes. But sometimes they just feel like they do. When in reality, they actually have more help than they'd like to think or than they perhaps know. And that's because of not knowing the vulnerability of the self. We have to know the pros, but we also have to know the cons. We have to know our strengths, we have to know our weaknesses, and we have to aim to improve upon both of them. We have to go to that negative headspace and be like, man, what do I need? I need to stand up for myself. I can't handle it right now, and I need to say that this is too much for me. That's really hard sometimes. And that's exactly what this video is for us to learn our strengths and weaknesses and how to improve as an individual so we can be the best us that we can be. So if you are an Enneagram 8, 9, or 1, listen closely. Have an open heart and an open mind. Let's take this ride together. The Enneagram. Some main themes of the Enneagram would include: likes to do things correctly and to high standards. Enneagram 1s are known to be sticklers for rules and pay close attention to detail. They also avoid making mistakes. To others, they appear perfectionistic, responsible, and exacting. 1s are typically sticklers for rules and details and get frustrated when things don't live up to their very high standards at work, in relationships, or in their day-to-day lives. Some core identifications of the Enneagram 1 include: serious and straightforward during conversations, attuned to practicality and frugality, hardworking and diligent as employees, high internal standards, rigidity in plans and decisions, intense ability to concentrate, natural talent for teaching and instructing. But with this comes the basic fear of the Enneagram 1. 1s fear being bad people, morally flawed, or otherwise seen as imperfect. They cope with this fear by being rigidly disciplined and very hard on themselves, and often those around them too. The basic desire of the Enneagram 1: Enneagram 1s strive to be good and honorable and to live a life with purpose. They seek to be the best and most correct. They seek to do things in the best and most correct way and manner. The invitation to abundance, the balance of the self of the Enneagram 1 includes something like this: to live for a higher purpose, remembering that it is in your nature to be wise and discerning. You should allow yourself to have more fun. I should allow myself to open up more about my inner world. When will the Enneagram 1 become present in their life? An Enneagram 1 might say to themselves something like, I won't become present to my life fully until I have attained complete balance and integrity, make no mistakes, and have everything in my world sensibly organized. When I have achieved perfection, then I'll show up. The marching orders for the Enneagram 1 might go something like this. This is something an Enneagram 1 might say to themselves. You are good or okay if you do what is right. Simple, right? But there's a big contradiction to this. Sounds reasonable. But how do you know what is right? Who says so? Is your set of standards objective or subjective? Where did these ideas come from? Ones struggle to be good, but they're never good enough for their own super egos. That's right. There's such a high standard that some ones have for themselves that they can't even meet their own expectations and standards, and with that can come a lot of problems and a lot of issues. As part of the gut triad, imagine yourself in a scenario where you don't come through, where you don't complete the task, where you leave something left to error, something you overlooked. You might beat yourself up, you might feel tense on the inside, and that's that gut feeling talking to you. That's that gut feeling coming to life. And that's when your shoulders get really high up. And when you get really tense and you tell yourself, why wasn't I good enough? Why couldn't I do what I needed to do? That comes from an upbringing that was perhaps too intense at a young age, where you felt like it was your responsibility to come through for your family, to come through for your mom, to come through for your dad. That if you didn't do your best, if you didn't deliver your best, everything was going to go horrible. I'm here to tell you that is not true. We have to learn to overcome those anxieties and that trauma that we had when we were younger. A healing attitude is something that can really make a difference in the life of an Enneagram 1. A healing attitude for the Enneagram 1 might sound something like this. Maybe others are right. Maybe someone else has a better idea. Maybe others will learn for themselves. Maybe I've done all that can be done. It is perfectly okay for me to share my inner world with others I trust and care for. Humans make mistakes, and I am a human. So therefore, it's perfectly fine if I mess up or make mistakes here and there. Same goes for other people. Enneagram 1s. Known to be the ones that seek to do good and do the right thing to satisfy an urgent need to be virtuous and responsible, to avoid fault and blame. This drive provides a defense, protection in a world that demands and rewards good behavior and punishes bad behavior. This archetype also exists as the superego, that part of the psyche that stands in for the parental voice of authority. This internal force exercises its power to tame the excesses born of raw impulses, animal instinct, and unrestricted forms of self-interested self-expression. Type 1s are thus the prototype for that part in all of us that strives to match the high standards of good behavior as a way of proving ourselves worthy and avoiding blame and fault. I'm here to tell you that is a helpful way of viewing life, but can also be a very flawed way of looking at life. The type 1 personality defends against criticism, real or threatened or imagined, shame and punish them for being wrong or bad. Type 1 personalities defend against criticism, real or threatened, and shame or punishment for being wrong or bad. Ones often report that they experience pressure early in life to do something well or correct at a time when they were too young to take on the burden of this responsibility. This experience of criticism from parental figures or others creates an anxious sense in the young. 1, that there is a right way to do things. Doing the right thing and striving for faultless performance inspires supportive feedback and positive feelings. Some ones experience this early responsibility because they lacked structural support or psychological holding in their childhood environment. Chaos or uncertainty or anxiety came when things were not done right. And this creates this sense of anxiety and paranoia. If you feel you have to do something something that might not be done. They're looking, they're gonna judge. I'm not worthy. Those instances in your mind and in your head have to do with a time when you were a little girl, a little boy, a little kid, whatever. When you were young, at a time when you weren't ready, when you felt like all the responsibility was on you and on your shoulders. Here to tell you, you did an amazing job for being so young and being able to do that. I'm here to tell you, you did an amazing job for being so young and being able to do that. It takes a lot of courage and determination, but at the same time, you got to have that same courage and determination to take it easy on yourself and take it easy sometimes on your loved ones. As an Enneagram 1, you have a lot of love and you have a lot of discipline in your life, but don't overdo it on yourself. The beauty in life comes sometimes from spontaneity, from not planning, from just going with the flow, and for sometimes just sharing what you really feel about stuff. Not letting, oh hey, how's this person gonna feel if I share this? Well, if they're your friend, your family member, your loved one, and they care about you, hey, sometimes you gotta share some stuff about you some other people aren't gonna like. They're your friends and family, they gotta be cool with it. So I urge you, open up a little more about yourself if you're an Enneagram 1 that feels you haven't had the chance to do that. Enneagram 1s are great and amazing people. They're really disciplined, but sometimes too disciplined. Don't get lost in being disciplined and keeping the order and structure and planning all the time. Sometimes you gotta be a type B person, so to speak. Just chill, mellow out. Don't let stuff have as much intensity as it does, and sometimes that comes from a place of anxiety. So with that, I would say, if you feel anxious during certain moments, like you have to do something, like, oh hey, my friends are coming over, I have to do this, otherwise I'm a failure. Oh, my parents are coming over, if I don't do this, oh, I'm a failure, they're gonna hate me. Take it easy on yourself. No, they're not gonna hate you. No, it's not gonna be over. It might be a little different, but if you are an adult who grew up like that with a parent that was so strict and demanding over you, that you feel now as an adult you can't stand up for yourself, I'm here to tell you you're wrong. You can't stand up for yourself. You just don't have the tenacity or courage to do so yet. I'm here to tell you that I believe in you. I know you can do it. You're part of the body triad. You have that internal gut, the gut feeling of knowing, the gut feeling of taking that drive and inspiration, that same determination that you feel when you feel you have to do something. If you can take that inspiration and drive and apply that to different things, especially in this example, if you can take that drive and determination that you feel with your obligations, if you can make yourself and mellowing out and taking it easy on yourself as the obligation, you'd be amazed how much you can get done. I believe in you, Enneagram 1s. Be the best you that you can be. The Enneagram 8. The dominant one. The bossy one. The strong one. The one that refuses to admit weakness. Tenacious tenacity. Intense. Some main themes of the Enneagram 8. Eights are defined by their desire to be powerful and to avoid any vulnerability. They present a confident assertive and decisive image to others. 8s can be argumentative and intimidating. It is important to them to stand up for what they believe in and to protect those who are weaker than themselves. Goal-oriented and self-competent challengers trailblaze boldly through all walks of life and take great pride in their independence and sharp minds. They hold their heads up high and will pick themselves right back up after each stumble, stronger than before. 8s rebel against the rules of society. The opinions of others will have absolutely no effect on their standings or opinions upon an issue, as they pride themselves on being fully capable and self-sufficient. Some core identifications of the Enneagram 8 include independent and self-sufficient, fierce and confident look, determination and stamina, very energetic and busy, fiery passions and power, stubborn and headstrong, serious about control over environment. At the same time, though, comes the basic fear of the Enneagram 8. 8s fear being vulnerable. And sometimes being powerless. And they cope with this fear of being vulnerable by always being strong and in control. The basic desire of the Enneagram 8 includes being motivated by their desire to be independent and in control. They resist appearing or feeling weak and reject any authority that restricts them. This can be very helpful in some ways, but can be quite damaging in many others. We look to the invitation of abundance. How do you balance out the self in regards to an Enneagram 8? We take a look at some details in correspondence. To know and understand that it is okay to be introspective and reflect upon people, places, and things that make you feel weak or vulnerable. To know and understand that there are people out there that truly care and love you more than you might allow yourself to know. Conquering your vulnerabilities, like everything else an 8 conquers, will make you into a much stronger, effective, and impactful human being. For many 8s, their vulnerabilities, whether they're conscious about them or not, are their biggest challenges. And what do 8s do to challenges? You go and conquer them. Let me reiterate, for many 8s, their vulnerabilities, whether they know about them or not, are their biggest challenges. And for a lot of 8s, unfortunately, they don't know their vulnerabilities because they refuse to reflect on their weaknesses sometimes, or sometimes their whole life for some of them. An Enneagram 8 might say to themselves, I will become present to my life only when I have conquered that which needs to be conquered in my life, and when I think I have eliminated all vulnerability. The marching orders of an Enneagram 8 might include conquer that which is worthy of conquering, regardless of whether your mental or physical health limits are being nourished. It's a contradiction there. Enneagram 8, sometimes you work really hard. Sometimes you work too hard to the point where you forget about yourself. You forget to sleep. You forget to eat. You forget about your loved ones. You forget about yourself. So there's a contradiction there with those marching orders about conquering everything. What if you hurt those you are trying to help by pushing yourself past your limits? What if by not knowing your own vulnerabilities, you are self-sabotaging your own goals and hurting those important to you? That's a really strong reflecting point, considering an Enneagram 8 does not like to view certain things or a lot of things as weak. But at the same time, in order to know yourself, you have to know both your strengths and your weaknesses. In order to conquer in this life as an Enneagram 8, you have to know your strengths and your weaknesses. Because your weaknesses will leave an open window of vulnerability that will cause you many issues and many problems. What can we do as an Enneagram 8? What can be a healing attitude for the Enneagram 8? Perhaps I should reflect upon my limits and vulnerabilities. That way, I learn to improve upon them, and I can do an even better job at completing and accomplishing my goals and not unintentionally hurting others and myself. The type A represents the archetype of the person who denies weakness and vulnerability by taking refuge in fearlessness, power, and strength. This archetype tends to express instinctual drives in a less inhibited way and push back on whatever might restrict them. The type 8 Enneagram as a child was around a volatile, intense environment where perhaps they didn't feel safe, where perhaps they saw one of their parents being threatened or hurt by the other parent, or perhaps saw one of their parents in danger by something or someone. The Enneagram 8 child had to learn how to be intense and how to be strong from a young age because of feeling a lack of protection from those around them, whether it be at home, whether it be at school, whether it be at any other location, whether it be at the park, in the neighborhood with the kids. An Enneagram 8 has to deal with a lot of rejection and a lot of intensity and a lot of sometimes issues with trust, because from a young age we have sometimes had those people closest to us fail us. We feel like we can't count on anybody. Like we just need to do it all. We can do it all ourselves. We don't need anybody else. An Enneagram 8 might say to themselves, forget others. Screw them. I will get this done myself. When you need something done right, you need to do it yourself might be the calling card of an Enneagram 8. I'm here to tell you, you can't do everything by yourself. And the biggest strength you can attain is knowing your weakness. Because if you know your weakness and you become introspective of that weakness like a true Enneagram 8, you will conquer that weakness. Like any other issue in your life you have faced as an 8, when you conquer it, when you think about it, when you analyze it, and when you beat it, you can overcome. You can improve. Once you know yourself, you'll be able to overcome whatever challenge comes your way in that territory. It's not easy to do that though. It's not easy to do that when we feel vulnerable and when we feel weak, yet we don't want to talk about it. We might not even know what being weak feels like. I asked an Enneagram 8, when you do something strong or brutal in other people's eyes, how do you do it? The Enneagram 8 told me, I don't know, I just do it. And then I told them, that's it. How do you explain that to somebody? Oh, go ahead and just do that brutal, scary thing. Just do it. That's what I would do. If you're an Enneagram 8, imagine yourself having to explain to somebody, how do you do the things that you do that are intense and that for some people consider really strong and brave? How do you do that? How do you do that? You can't say, oh, I just do it. I'm not scared. That's where you need to learn more from. That's the system you need to learn from. And how do you learn about that? You have to go back to your childhood, to those early memories when you had your feelings hurt, when you had your heart crushed, and you were disappointed. And perhaps that friend didn't come through. Perhaps your friends and family members deserted you sometime. Perhaps you got beat up or you got hurt at a time where you wish someone would have been there to help you out. Perhaps you had a birthday party that nobody came to. Perhaps you feel like you've done so much for so many people. Perhaps you feel like you've done so much for so many people, but so many people haven't done anything for you. That so little people have done something for you. Enneagram 8 is a tough, perhaps the toughest of the Enneagram numbers. But with that comes a vulnerability that you have to get to know. Know and understand that you don't always have to be this dominant and fierce individual. You'll be safe. It's okay to open up a little bit, little by little. It's okay to admit what you don't like, what you're not good at. And perhaps some Enneagram 8s don't have a problem. Perhaps some Enneagram 8s don't have a problem admitting some vulnerabilities. It's because they're strong individuals. But there's certain things, though, because of years of not viewing certain things as vulnerability or weakness, or not really going there mentally. When you think about some of those situations or things, they're going to open up memories and thoughts that you're going to be able to look at and analyze differently. That with those very notions and those very thoughts, you're going to gain access to new information. You're going to gain access to new information, and you're going to get a new skill set. It's going to help you conquer and attain new goals. It's for Enneagram 8, it's what it's all about. Is improving, refining, gaining power through refinement and achievement and goals. Don't neglect yourself, though. Don't neglect your mental health. Get a good night's sleep if you haven't done so already. Get a good night's sleep more often. Make sure to have nourishment when you're working. It feels great to work and work hard. Make sure to work hard and taking care of yourself. Make sure to exercise as well. For a lot of Enneagram 8s, you don't really need to say that because they already exercise. It's common for 8s to really take care of themselves in ways of power. But Enneagram 8s have to learn how to take care of themselves in terms of knowing when something might be too brutal. Where maybe in that day or in that week or in that month you can handle the tough situations you're going through. But what about 5 months later? You might be exhausted and you might not know it. Because you might view exhaustion as weakness and you're just going to keep going. But when you're exhausted, both physically and mentally, you're not going to deliver your best. And that goes against a lot of the goals of the 8, which is to do an amazing job at what you do. I urge you, go out there and get grandmates. Most importantly, don't forget, I believe the Enneagram 9. The calm one. The collected. The mellow, easy to get along with. The helper. will be there for you. Generally liked by most people. Fluid yet slow movements and gestures. An ability to diffuse conflict. We look at some main themes of motivation. Enneagram 9. Nines are defined by their desire to maintain a sense of inner peace and harmony, and to avoid conflict or other emotional disturbances. They are typically agreeable, calm, and easy to be around. Nines rarely rock the boat, but they can be stubborn. While they typically go with the flow, they dislike being controlled and will respond with passive resistance if pushed too far. Nines fear being too needy and thus pushing people away. They cope with this fear by submitting to the desires and agendas of the people around them, being agreeable in order to be included. We look at the basic fear of the Enneagram 9. Nines fear being too needy and thus push people away, and sometimes don't stand up for themselves or ask for help when it would be really necessary. And they cope with this fear by submitting to the desires and agendas of the people around them. And they do this because they want to feel included, like they're part of what's going on, and they have this fear of not being included at the same time. So the basic desire of the Enneagram 9 comes in the sense of nines are motivated by their need for peace and harmony in their environment, and the desire to avoid conflict and deal with unpleasant emotions. We look at an invitation to abundance. What is the balance of the self for the Enneagram 9? That is to know and understand that you are fully capable of handling conflict and making major changes. In order for progress to be made, change needs to occur. And when change occurs, conflict can also arise. But this does not mean you cannot handle it. You can always ask for help from those you trust. Asking for help may not be easy for a 9, but giving help goes both ways. You can always ask for help from those you trust. Asking for help may not be easy, but at the same time, just like you as a 9 like helping those you care about, those you care about also want to help you out. Think about that. An Enneagram 9 might say to themselves, I will become present to my life only when I have completed the things necessary for conflict to be removed, and so everyone can get along for the most part, and things can flow smoothly, thus greatly limiting the chance for altercations and disagreements. The marching orders an Enneagram 9 might say to themselves might go something like this. You are good / worthy only when you have helped your loved ones / those close to you achieve their goals and duties. But there's a contradiction here. How many of those goals have to be completed for you to be ready and be fulfilled? Other people's goals, you want to help them out. What about you? What about your goals? What about you? Are your goals and responsibilities just as important as those close to you that you love? Do you know or have your own goals? Neglecting yourself continuously will cause you to become a more negative version of yourself. Whether that be neglecting rest, nourishment, and your mental health, remember that you yourself are worthy of love and help from those that you provide it to. You have to take care of yourself. It's really important. I know it might feel anxious, like you might disrupt the force. You might disrupt the force. You might disrupt what's going on. You might disrupt the routine, the pattern, what's known. Sometimes for change to arise, we need to go to that uncomfortable place sometimes in our head. And we need to start thinking about a plan of what are we going to do to change this? What are we going to do to improve this? It's not always easy, but with some help and practice and determination, you can do it. A healing attitude for an Enneagram 9 might go something like this. Perhaps there are many scenarios in life that require further discussion and analysis. Conflict will not always arise when I or somebody else disagrees or has differing views or opinions. Not all change is bad, and I myself can perhaps even help out those I care for by offering to improve/modify a system or facet of life. My mental health is just as important as my loved ones, and it is perfectly alright for me to ask for help when I need it. Just like my loved ones ask it of me. Love and consideration is a two-way street. Enneagram 9s, don't forget that. In the framework of the Enneagram, type 9s are adaptable, likable, and easygoing. They specialize in detecting tension and finding ways to mediate and diffuse conflict, oriented towards inclusion, consensus, and harmony. Enneagram 9s excel at understanding and valuing different perspectives and mediating between them to resolve disputes and maintain peace. They are genuinely caring and unselfish, and their specific superpower lies in providing steadfast support to others that they care for. But at the same time, as with all archetypal personality types, however, type 9s, gifts and strengths also represent their fatal flaw or Achilles heel, as they can over-adjust to others and then have a hard time registering their own desires and asserting their own agendas. They get in their own way by focusing too much attention on what others want and deferring excessively to the people around them. By accommodating others and avoiding conflict in order to achieve comfort, they end up becoming deaf to their own inner voice. However, when they can learn to wake up to themselves, access their own internal compass, and initiate action on their own behalf, they can balance their attention to others with an ability to act in support of themselves. Very strong. Considered to be the second strongest of the Enneagram numbers. You can do it. When change needs to arise, when you need to stand up for yourself and say, hey, I've had enough, this is too difficult, you can do it. You're perfectly capable of making change. Even if it feels uncomfortable, you got to start little by little. Don't just pacify yourself and try to distract yourself with random stuff in order not to do it. It says that the Enneagram 9 sometimes is referred to as narcotization. The principal way 9s dissociate from psychological pain or discomfort is through a kind of dimming of awareness. through putting themselves to sleep in various ways, through immersing themselves in one activity or another, reading, eating, watching TV, or doing crossword puzzles. 9s distract themselves as a way of avoiding their own feelings, needs, and wants through many different kinds of unconscious maneuvers, including joking around, talking too much, or focusing on inessentials. 9s water down their own experience of life, their interactions with others, and their contact with themselves to buffer themselves against the pain of separation, of not being heard, or of not feeling a sense of belonging. Nines often report that they grew up in a family in which their opinions weren't heard, in which others were more forceful in expressing their opinions, or where the best strategy to feeling calm and avoiding upset was to go along with what others wanted. Through this experience of being overlooked or overpowered, a 9 learns to specialize in being someone who is easygoing and accommodating of others, but who, when asked for an opinion, doesn't know what they want and finds it easier to let others decide. 9s typically have an unmet need for a satisfying sense of union, a feeling of belonging, or connectedness with others who would see and affirm the 9's individuality. When they were children, 9s may not have received the attention they needed, and their wishes and preferences typically weren't listened to or acted upon. So as an Enneagram 9, I want you to know that your internal world, who and what you are, in order for an individual, for a human to live, you gotta let that real part of yourself out, those real parts, that internal world. Life is human connection. You can be the most introverted person in the world, but human connection is still an important thing. And sometimes Enneagram 9s, by going along with what other people want and helping out so many other people and things and making sure things are right, you neglect yourself, you neglect who you are. And this might have gone on for years. There might be certain things maybe that you think about every so often. You're like, I'll say this one of these days, I'll share this. They might not like it, but maybe I'll say it, maybe I should. Maybe you have that internal battle going on. I'm here to tell you that if you've given your family and loved ones and friends a lot of love and a lot of help, shoot, they owe it to you to hear those things that, you perhaps aren't really cool with or would like some help and stuff like that. Hey, that's how life works. You help other people out, they're gonna owe you. So you can bring that up if you need to. Use that as a helping tool. If you've really helped out people over and over again, just know and understand that you deserve that help right back. And guess what? You're not going to be disrespected as a human being. You're not going to be looked upon any less. Your family members or friends might be a little shocked or might be like, whoa, really? Did so-and-so really ask for help or say something or share something a little deeper? That's the spice of life. To open up about yourself and connect with somebody else. Have them open up and connect with you. Sometimes conversations and connections are great, sometimes not so great. That's perfectly fine. But learning to open up, learning to ask for help, learning to just let go sometimes. And understand that sometimes conflict is going to arise and things are going to happen, but it's not up to you to be the referee all the time. Sometimes somebody else can be the referee. And you can just relax. And share a funny story. Something you like. Something you wouldn't usually say. Have that be your first goal. A little something like that. And you'd be surprised how much you can improve and how much your quality of life can also improve. So give it a go. Enneagram 9s. Hard-working people. Really caring individuals. But just promise me that you're going to care about yourself just as much. Because remember, Enneagram 9s, you can do it. I believe in you. Help yourself.